Hey, thanks so much for tuning in to Respect Her Game. If you're enjoying this show, be sure to check out In Essence Daily Sports Podcast. Boston has entered the chat. You can listen on Apple, Amazon, Spotify, and wherever else you listen to your podcasts. What is up? I'm AB here with Pretty in Pink, Kasey Hudson, the Sports Case. We got a fun show for you all today. We're talking hoops and hockey. We're going to go through the WNBA preseason, talk some PWHL and the NHL playoffs. But first, like we always do, Kasey, what is new in your life?
Oh my gosh. I can't say too much is new, but this weekend was perfect because I finally got the sunburn that I have been asking for.
Good. I'm still working on that.
Yeah.
Clearly.
Hit the nature trails with my pup Luna, and I didn't realize how invigorating it was to get a car wash, especially after all the season changes and stuff. So it was like a self-care weekend in a number of ways. It was
for your car.
Clean the car, hit the nature trail, get some sun, clean the house, do all the things. So it was fantastic because in the same breath I was battling allergies. So yeah, I was just doing the combination of things.
The allergies are so bad for me. Pollen has always been a major issue, especially even on the car.
Yes.
When you go outside and you're it's all over you. I'm well, this is why. And I remember I was in Nashville, Tennessee, and the allergies there are so bad. You have a pollen problem, don't go to Tennessee. And I fell asleep on my grandmother's screened-in porch couch outside, and literally
Annabelle.
I wake up and it's yellow everywhere. I'm that's why I can't breathe. It's because
100%.
I just slept on top of pollen.
It's like dust. You just need the smallest particle around you for it to be life-changing for the next week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, whatever the case may be. But I thought, weirdly, I was oh my gosh, Florida is going to be the death of me allergy-wise. Moving up north, I should be fine. No. There's 10,000 more flowers that bloom here than in Florida, at least where I grew up. So I was shocked when I started feeling the things, the pressure points, the spring is here moments. But
you got to get on the Claritin and let it kick in day after day.
Yeah.
After day.
And then ask yourself, am I immune to it now? Do I switch to something else? But no, outside of allergies, it's a great weekend. It's still a busy time because NHL playoffs are going on and I do outside coverage with that stuff. So it's funny because it's allergies, sleep, lay down. And then it's these intense hype moments because playoffs are going on. And then it's this calm moment of self-care and spin classes and nature trails. So that's my life.
Well, and I just found out before the show, you used to teach spin classes.
I did.
And I do want to shout you out because I asked Kasey, I was when I do spin classes, very infrequently, but I was when I've done spin classes, I always wonder, is the instructor actually going as hard as you're going? Are they actually doing the same
AB
resistance?
did put me on the spot.
Kasey does it. Kasey is the coach you want to do their class with because she's doing the workout with you.
I was. We were talking about this, and especially with our producer who also has a instructor background.
Shout out Ethan, Orange Theory.
Exactly. Shout out Ethan. But I felt so I felt guilty if I didn't. You know what I mean? Because it's one thing to put together these structures, and especially if you're known to have an insane class, and I was considered the Sour Patch Kid instructor, so I was super sweet, but then my classes were psychotic.
I've never heard that. I'm gonna use that now.
Yeah, okay. It was all over our Soho site. It was
is a cinnamon bun but could kill you.
Exactly. The cinnamon bun that can kill you. But I always felt so bad because I was if I'm gonna put them through hell, I can't just watch and cheer them on and tell them you got this if I'm not capable of it myself. But then there's just this adrenaline kick that also used to go off for me because my first class would be 6 o'clock in the morning and I would teach 2 to 3 in the morning back to back to back.
It's wild.
And I was just I can do this, but I felt superhuman because my lungs and my legs were just insane when I was instructing.
You were yoked.
Yeah, it was wild.
You were yoked internally too with that lung capacity. But before we start talking about basketball, I do want to ask you because it is Cinco de Mayo.
Right.
So do you have a favorite Mexican food place here?
Okay,
or maybe
so
in Florida,
I was gonna say, luckily it's kind of a twofer because there is a place that we used to go to in Florida in downtown Orlando called Lolita's, and they had a bunch of sugar skulls all over the place. I love sugar skulls. And then Dia de los Muertos is a big thing in my family as well. So I was just okay, this carries all the vibes, and the food was fantastic. So I found out that there's a Lolita's here in Boston.
There is. It's amazing. I actually went pretty recently. It's so good.
It was.
It's so good. And
It
it's
still
like a fun
holds
vibe.
too.
Yeah,
Yes.
it's like a fun. I feel like that's like half the battle. Like sometimes the food can be really bad. But you're like, I just like the ambiance.
Yeah.
So it counts.
The
and it's
restaurant,
fun.
the dim lights are bad nice,
Yeah.
but like I could use more chips and queso kind of thing.
Oh, definitely.
Yeah,
I mean,
100%.
you get a good chips and queso, you're like, anything else could come, or chips and guac, anything else that comes, it doesn't matter.
Oh my gosh.
Because you fill up on all of that anyway.
Yeah, that is the totality of the experience. My best friend Nikki and I, in my freshman year of college, there was a Mexican restaurant right next to University of Florida, and when I tell you we ate there almost like every single day, her and I, our freshman diet was chips, salsa, queso, and margaritas.
Yep.
And
Hey.
like, was it
It got you
positive
through.
experience?
Yeah. It got you through.
It's like-
Oh, that's good.
You can't ask for anything better. So life can be as simple as great chips, guac, salsa, all the
Hey,
things.
that's all you need. I love it. Well, I just had to ask because you have been a lot of places, and so it's good to know that we both have a similar. So maybe you'll see the next Respecter game at Lolita's. Maybe
Honestly.
maybe we'll get to do it there.
It'd be a great episode.
But let's get to our WNBA preseason recap. And normally preseason games don't have really any hype around them, okay? But that was not the case with this last weekend. It was back to school day for Caitlin Clark. Her return to Iowa. The Fever were playing the Brazilian national team, and they won 108-44. But this is the craziest thing. You look at that score and you're like, oh, that game must have been dead. The crowd must have just been like boring. That was absolutely not what this was. There were 15,000 fans in attendance. The average ticket sold for $670. This was the highest in WNBA since they began tracking in 2015. So really, like, even though this game was a blowout and it probably wasn't as competitive as you would have thought, I mean, Kasey, what were your just reactions to this game?
I had two reactions to it. My first one being just like to have that kind of response at the ticket price, at the amount of fans in the stands, and it's a preseason game for the WNBA is just, it's wild. It just speaks so highly to how far this sport is coming and how the growth is really, you know, in the details and everything that they've done right over the last season or two. It also continues to attest to what Caitlin Clark's presence mean to this sport, because she said it after the game how much she just loves playing the game. So the passion is translating. But then also on the other flip of the coin, I'm like, $670 to watch a blowout is a hard thing. So to see fans stick around just continues to speak to the excitement, the growth, and where this game has an opportunity to go. I mean, I wasn't expecting this for preseason.
No, definitely not. And Caitlin Clark even said it before the game. She was like, I've seen more Fever gear than Iowa gear. Like, you would think they'd all wear Iowa gear because that's what number one they own. But she's like, there were so many people that were in the Fever gear. So I think that was just cool to see as well. And I did see, back to kind of the ticket price, I did see a few fans kind of complaining like, hey, like, why are we paying $670 to go to a preseason game? Like, yes, maybe, but like, I totally see the other side of it. Like, let's pump that up. Like, let's go. Like, women's basketball we're trying to get it on the rise, right, in a sense. And so like, that's amazing. And not every game is going to cost that much, right? Like, it's Caitlin's return to Iowa. Like, it was probably the same when the other WNBA teams are going to do this, you know, in the future and have gone to like LSU, right? And so I just think that side of it, I'm like, yeah, but like, this is what we want. Like, we want it to be expensive. We want it to be a higher ticket demand. Yeah,
you want it to be worthy of such. And so like, again, for that to happen during preseason, I think already kind of hits the marks that one would want to hit from the marketing and business perspective of this. And then sticking around, you know, you saw how when the blowout was going to take place, you saw the temperature of this game and how everything was really about to play out. And I mean, fans were still sticking around because it was like they wanted to continue to see the Fever, what they were going to do. And what I love also is Caitlin Clark talked about the fact of like how electric the crowd was, but she also continued to speak to the fact that when she was done with her playing time, the crowd was still equally as hype of when she was on the court versus when she was like done with her playing time for the night. So that takes away that whole like, okay, we're just doing this because of Caitlin Clark. Like, no, like she has that initial, you know, ignition. She's the kerosene to the situation, but like the fan base is really getting into the whole buy-in of like the WNBA, these athletes and the performances that they put on the court. Kelsey Mitchell, we talked about her a little bit on the last Respect Her game. Like, I feel like fans were excited to see her and some of her big moments. You know, she had a big 3-pointer in the first quarter and the fans just like lost it over that. We saw some of the new assets that they added to the roster as well. So I just love the completion of like the love and the excitement and the passion and the expectation and anticipation for the roster and the sport as a whole.
Definitely. And you can imagine that all of Iowa wants to be a Fever fan and like really invest in that and now follow the team. But I will say, when Caitlin did hit a deep three, I thought that I was like laying on like the remote because it got so loud, and I was like, what happened? Like, did I like
the volume like
the volume? And I was like, oh no, Caitlin just hit like a really deep three. Like, that's why. So yes, it's so cool to hear that like she even recognized like, oh, it was like, didn't feel like a lull in energy when I wasn't out there. And she even had to take some time off of this game. Caitlin was seen on a bike kind of working through a leg, a little bit of a leg injury that she's working through. But I had to think, like, there is no way that they're going to sit Caitlin and rest her for this game. It's literally her return home. Like, you can't not play her, right?
No, you couldn't not play her. And then there's just all the poetic moments, combined. You talk about the big three-pointer. Like, this is something she was doing in her prime at Iowa and in her prime in her college career, and then to come back and to like be able to replicate that. And like, you have a number of people that made their debuts over the weekend talking about like the transition from college to the WNBA. So she gets to go back home and show that like the person that she was there is like the next step and the next version of herself, but can still have those moments. And I love all the like tribute factors that went into it also. So like, you've got the big splashy plays that she once did, but she also wore her like big game shoes. Have you heard of these?
No, I need to see them.
So she's got like her like big game shoes are her black and gold Bruce Lee Kobe Nike shoes, and she only wears them for like what she feels is going to be like a big game. So she wore it to her return home because this was like a part of her whole identity throughout her collegiate career.
Well, if you're the opponent and you see Caitlin
wearing these shoes, like, what do you do?
Shoes, you're like, shoot, man, I thought last game was a big game. It's like the preseason game.
Right, exactly. You don't want to talk yourself out of it, but then if I saw that, I'd just be like, oh, dang, here she goes. Like, she's already dubbed this one, like, red X mark underneath, and said that this is going to be a takeoff game for her. So I loved all the little extra attributes that played into it.
They did. And, like, I will say the broadcast, too, did a great job. There were interviews with her parents in the stands during the game. They did a walk down memory lane pregame. Like, it very much felt like, yes, this is like a Fever basketball game, but it's really like a Caitlin Clark semi-documentary in a sense, like their return home. And so I did love all that. And it really, and Stephanie White, the new head coach for the Fever, said this was a no-brainer to come and do this. And I think it's a no-brainer for so many reasons. Like, one, play against different competition. Mm-hmm. Yes, it might not have been super competitive, but it's also preseason. You're playing different people, you're resting your stars, all the things. But she got to wear number 22 with the Indiana Fever, and that's what Caitlin's wearing now. So it's just so funny when she's asked about, who wore it better, in a sense, she's like, oh my gosh, Caitlin, for sure. But it is cool just to see this organization and to see. I'm excited really to see how Stephanie White leads this team. And what we were talking about last week a lot was, okay, now there's 8 WNBA teams who have new head coaches. So who's going to prove that they did the best in free agency, they did the best in the draft, and they really did a good job getting their head coach to put this new roster together. If you're enjoying the show, you can catch new episodes of Respect Her Game every Tuesday. You can watch the show on YouTube or Twitch and listen on Apple, Amazon, Spotify, and wherever else you get your podcasts.
100%. And that's such a big question right now, because preseason is where you start to kind of see the molding and the formulation of these rosters, which brings us so perfectly to the fact that the Fever already made 2 cuts today, and one of those 2 cuts, one of the players that end up going on waivers after the preseason just gets going, is one of their draft picks, their 20th overall draft pick in the second round. Bree Hall ends up getting sent down to waivers, and it just makes you realize, yes, the competitive nature of all of this, but the significance of these head coaches making sure that they have the right roster right out the gate. Now, it's scary to think, because originally, especially when you get drafted, in those earlier rounds, you can already kind of see your career playing out in front of you, and you can see those opportunities and where they would come in. So I would feel defeated if I was, Hall, and I'm already getting sent down to waivers. She was such a defensive pillar for South Carolina. I feel like she would have had a role on the Fever roster, especially with her defensive giftings. But I feel like it comes down to culture, it comes down to system, and it comes down to making sure that you have exactly the kind of players that that you can coach through the season.
And I was shocked too when I found that out. I was like, what? She just got drafted, right? And she was like one of the stars in even the Final Four, and like really leading South Carolina in all ways, especially defensively. But you look at the amount of time that we still have before opening day.
Right.
It's like, okay, rosters can shift. People get hurt. You might realize what different needs you need for different matchups as well. And so it is crazy to kind of, see a star like that, especially with like the star power that a lot of these college basketball players had, like almost more so than some WNBA players because these college fan bases are so strong. But you look at the Fever and what they did in free agency, and they really filled a lot of the weaknesses that they had last season. They got DeWanna Bonner, this is her 15th season in the WNBA. She's the most experienced player in the WNBA. I'm like, that's kind of a baller line to be able to like own. Like, you're the most experienced player in your league,
right?
Like, in your entire
league. Professional league,
right? And they have Natasha Howard. But so just with both of those women and having that experience, you can probably bet that Stephanie White is going to lean on that and err on that side, because you do have not rookies but younger players in Aaliyah Boston and Caitlin Clark. And so you can kind of see how the mix of those is good. At the same time, if you can't keep up with the new pace and if you can't keep up with just being in the new league, then they're going to have to err on the side of experience.
Yeah, and I think having the balance of all of it is going to be very crucial, because we saw a number of teams last year in the WNBA where their roster was heavily tilted with a veteran presence, but they just weren't able to have that next gear to compete, and then vice versa, flip the coin. A very young team that you can see where their inexperience kind of played into them coming up short in certain games or tight matchups. So having that well-blended caliber of a roster is crucial, and like it helps the coach out a lot, because when you have veterans that can step to and speak to particular situations, it kind of takes certain things off of your plate so that you can focus on the development of your younger players in a more specific, customized way. And it's only going to help your team when you're looking big picture and being like, okay, we want to put up new numbers this year, but we want to do it for the next 3 to 5 years to come. We don't want to just do it this year and then be rebuilding or retooling a year from now or every single season. You kind of want to find that this is our franchise look for a minute.
Definitely. And you have to sustain not only like 3 years in advance, but just that season, right? You talk about like, yes, you might be an experienced player, but that's also experience on your body. And if you want to get to the last game of the season and play in that championship game, then you need to be able to have girls who can go in and just run. People who can make those hustle plays so that your star players can focus on doing their job and not really having to pick up some of that horsepower work, maybe in those games that don't really mean that much. They can kind of take a night off, all those things. We see it in the NBA all the time. And so I think that's kind of, the push and pull of, okay, who do we need to have just for even like practice purposes, right? And I know there's a certain number of women that are allowed to just be active girls on the practice roster, but a lot's going to shake out for the WNBA and these rosters. But something I do want to talk about with the Caitlin Clark effect was this crazy statistic, okay? For this game, the average fan traveled 248 miles.
No way.
Isn't that insane? So I just want to know from you, have you ever, and not for your job because it doesn't technically count as a job, but have you, as a fan of any sport, traveled a far distance? Maybe it's not 248 miles, but what's the furthest you think you've traveled as a fan of a sport? Or I'm going to open the door to like a concert. Maybe you flew to a concert. So what's the furthest thing you feel like you've traveled for to be a part of?
I got this. And give me 2 seconds, everyone. Here we go, because I'm on a consistent basis.
And you had to have gone there for that specific game or concert. It couldn't be like, oh, I was just like in Nashville, so I went to like Luke Combs.
No. I got you covered. I did consistently travel 274.7 miles.
Oh, so you beat the average.
I beat the average, but it was in support of my brother when he was playing at Florida State.
Okay, that counts.
It counts?
Yes.
Okay, great. Because like I was in my senior year of high school when he was in his freshman year of college, and then when I got into my freshman year of college, I was closer. I was in Gainesville. He was in Tallahassee. Then my sophomore year, I go to Orlando, and like just as far. So I was in that mix.
You're a good
but
sister.
There would be weekends
that
my
parents
watching
the show. Respect your game.
Oh my gosh, he watches, but he sends critiques and notes and stuff like that. Like I got hounded during the NFL draft when he was like, "You got to get that statement out better. Like you got to polish off your words." And I was just like, "Dude,
Hey, we all need it. I got some of those at home. Shout out, love you, Dad."
There you go. We love the men in our life.
Yes.
But yeah, so used to consistently make that drive to go support Big Brother. Concert. I have traveled for concerts because my dad lives in LA, so like to go out and get like the West Coast concert experience was one specific thing for sure. So I've seen Journey in LA. I've seen, why am I drawing a blank on this? I was a little emo gal growing up, so they have emo night all over the country.
No
And
way.
my best friend and I, yeah, it's on our calendars. Still, in our 30s, we will be attending emo nights. But
Well,
yeah,
I hope you all caught that. That was pretty awesome. That was pretty awesome. Well, that's impressive, and a good shout out to your brother. You're good.
I understand the dedication of where you were going with that, though. Like the
Yes.
fan
I mean,
dedication to plan to go.
It was crazy too, and like just to think. Obviously, it's like Iowa, right? Like it's different than being in like a massive city. But I think it's so awesome, and just to see the amount of little girls that were at that game asking Caitlin to sign autographs. Like they were showing their shirts. Like everybody had a different graphic shirt. I'm like, there was so much gear, but it kind of brought me to wonder, like more college teams should be doing this for their pro players. Like
Absolutely.
More college teams. And I even think that the pro WNBA teams, and we could even take this into like potentially PWHL in some, in some cases when you have superstars on certain teams, like I think the Fever, and this is an idea. So Fever, if you take this, like, please, like,
give
some,
AB
like,
a shout out and
like,
fly her out.
But I think the Fever should literally put in the Iowa Pro Shop like a whole Fever section, or make their own Fever Pro Shop in Iowa, like near the school, because then you're like really tapping into that market. And think about how many people would, they're touring Iowa and like, oh, let's go see the basketball arena, let's go to the pro shop. Whenever you go on a college tour or whenever you go to a new city and you're on a college campus, you always end up somehow at the pro shop, right? Or at the student bookstore is what it's called, right? And so I really think these WNBA teams should do that, and think about what if they did, sold some merch at UConn for the Dallas Wings. Like, that there's going to be a lot of Paige fans who are going to buy that stuff.
Oh, yeah. I think that's a brilliant idea. And even if they wanted to do a little temperature check, from the business perspective,
put it outside.
Right. Well, you could definitely do that. Put it on the school website, when you can go over to like the bookstore shop or whatever and get your like initial, because like for college visits, I mean, I was already looking at like getting, a hoodie, a long sleeve shirt. But if you at least have like a merch link in there to also support like their big athletes. But I love that because it doesn't take much to have a small section in the student bookstore shop, whatever we're going to call it, and have like that on display. Yeah. I think that that's brilliant. And plus I think UConn would go berserk for some Paige Beckers stuff. So do you think
now that we've seen just the success of these preseason games, like literally we're talking about a preseason game right now.
Yeah.
Do you think next year the Dallas Wings will be at UConn?
I think that they would be remiss not to do it. Just to see, there's been so many parallels between Caitlin Clark and what she's meant to basketball, college basketball, WNBA, in equal measure to Paige Beckers. And Paige Beckers just got like another award today on this very day. And the accolades, somebody tweeted her accolades don't even fit on a Wikipedia page, which I loved. That was amazing. But realistically, considering that, it would be insane to have an opportunity to just about replicate what you're seeing the Caitlin Clark effect to be and not have that same presentation and rollout for Paige Beckers. And it's funny that you mentioned her because she also made her debut this weekend with the Dallas Wings and caught a little bit of heat because some people were expecting her to come in and like rack up these insane amount of points. But again, it's preseason. She did have a totality of 10 points through about 22 minutes of play. Still many promising moments as to what she's going to mean to that team in the development. But then she talked about the fact of like the rapid transition from college basketball to WNBA. Like she was just playing college basketball a month ago.
She can articulate things so well. Like she's done so much media that she's able to like be so vulnerable too. Like, hey, this is hard, right? I think a lot of players who maybe haven't faced that much public attention, they might be asked like, oh, how's the adjustment? And their first initial thing is going to be, oh, I'm totally good. Like it's not as bad. Like you just got to go for it. But like that's not what Paige is saying here.
100%. And like, I feel like it's better for her to paint the realistic picture of like, guys, I was just playing college basketball 30 some odd days ago. I got drafted on April 14th. It hasn't even been 1 month since her being drafted to the
crazy.
WNBA.
I know, we were literally just talking about the draft.
Right.
And, which is too crazy that someone already got cut or, waived.
Yeah.
So there's so many changes already.
So many moving pieces. And when you can't even like get a minute to yourself, which I can't imagine she's had a moment, and then she has to go in and like everyone has this expectation of this massive performance. It's pretty insane, but it also speaks to the support and the excitement rallied behind Paige Beckers in her career to basically in an elaborate way answer your question and say, next year, I hope that we have a chance to go down to UConn and watch the Dallas
we
Wings play.
We could drive there, and I don't know what the mileage is on that, but that would technically not count.
What's Connecticut, 2 hours from here ish?
Yeah, well, probably. Well, I'm excited, and it's just crazy to zoom out and be like, we're only talking about not even regular season games yet, and a lot of shifts are going to happen. There are going to be more cuts to be made. Yeah, probably even some moves within different rosters. Like we'll see when the trade deadline goes and what ends up happening there. But I'm super excited for this upcoming season. It's always fun when you have new stars coming in.
It is.
But also like understanding that you're human and you're an athlete, and like we're saying, Bonner has the most experience in the WNBA as a whole. Like it takes time to get there.
Yes.
And it doesn't happen overnight. That's after 15 seasons of basketball. So all good things coming from the WNBA. And if you're enjoying the show, you can catch new episodes of Respect Her Game every Tuesday. You can watch the show on YouTube or Twitch and listen on Apple, Amazon, Spotify, and wherever else you get your podcasts. Okay, the second round of NHL playoffs is underway, and we won't be talking about the Bruins today, but I'm going to speak it into existence for next season. We're excited about that. But, Kasey, I do want to get your predictions and reactions, but not only from the reporter side. I do want to get to, before we get into it, a little bit of the fan side. So when we're now in the thick of playoff hockey, when you think about playoff hockey just throughout your life, what do you love the most about it?
Oh my gosh. It feels like such a basic answer, but I feel like what I love the most about it, it's the energy shift. Like it's not even the energy shift in the sense of like it's, elimination. It's, you either win 4 games or you're out. It's the energy in terms of like every single moment takes your breath away. Just every single moment. It's not even just like the big goals. It's not even just the big stops. It's every single play and detail in between. And that's just like, as a girl who was watching the Tampa Bay Lightning, like I think the first Lightning game I went to, I was 8 years old, you know? So like I have felt like the development of the team. I have seen when we have had like these terrible gut-wrenching losses, and then they always ask the question, is it more painful to lose by a little or lose by a lot? And I think in playoffs, I've
unfortunately done both.
Period. Exactly. We've experienced both, the loss in general. So like, yeah, it's just the energy shift. Like everything is different. From a different standpoint, the production team, like the opening of playoff games is just different. It's more elaborate. You learn more about the players. You learn things that you wouldn't learn during the regular season about your favorite players and your favorite team. So there's so much I can go on and on about, but like, yeah, playoffs is just a different beast. And I love and respect every sport. I played a number of them growing up, especially because I was a military brat, but there's nothing like NHL playoffs.
It's exciting. And I do feel like playoffs in all sports really like gain everyone in the city.
Yeah.
Like regardless if you've been paying attention during the regular season or not, you're like, oh, like playoffs, like let's go. And
yes.
Like, it becomes like such a bigger deal, and then you feel like you've been invested the whole time. And so I absolutely love it. And it's cool to just hear like your heart for it. And you're right, like the storylines become more dramatic. There's more things that go into it. And when your back's up against the wall, when you're facing a potential elimination, that's when you really see the character, how people are leading a team, how strong of an athlete you really are.
Mental.
Right? So I'm excited, and a lot of things are going to unfold, and really anything can happen. But let's just recap round 1. We'll start with the Stars comeback win over the Avalanche. What did you think about this game?
Poetic. That's got to be like
you are like caps. The best like romanticizing hockey. Like this is like amazing.
I can very much romanticize hockey.
You are like the yes, poetic. I love it.
It was so poetic, especially because this series. Let's start with the fact that heading into it, one of the top headlines, as we discussed, there's so many headlines, storylines. Top one was Mikko Rantin, who never wanted to leave the Colorado Avalanche, obviously being traded. And then he kind of turned into this like media villain because he didn't want to stay in Carolina. He wanted a certain numerical value to his contract, which he earned with Colorado, by the way, hands down. Then he ends up in Dallas. That's where he wanted to be. And it was all this like, what's he going to do now? And then the series starts and he's not really putting up any points. He's not really putting up any numbers. So it kind of looks like this whole like, oh, his former team has his number kind of thing. And then the switch goes off. The man goes off. He puts up 4 points in a period and replicates that energy for Game 7, securing a hat trick. And some people are like, it's not as sexy that like the third goal was an empty netter. But regardless, like that was him securing.
It's playoffs. Everything counts.
Especially when everything is just like way too close to call and the entire energy of a hockey game can shift in seconds. We saw that with a 1.6 second goal from the Jets. So it was just like that matchup alone. It was all of the, Abs get their captain back, which was an amazing storyline as well. But it was also like, how's Rantanen going to respond to his old team? And if not for Mikko Rantanen, there would be no Stars going to the second round. So that's what makes it romantic, poetic, all the things you want to call it. But it was Mikko securing that W for the Stars moving forward. And you're talking about a team that I've loved and kind of had as an underdog for the past 4 years. And they've just always had these like small miscues that never got them past certain, opponents. So it's really cool to see that they might be riding a high in a momentum swing that could carry them further than anticipated.
Yeah, and that wasn't the only wild game, and you mentioned it. So what did you think of this double overtime Jets versus Blue double overtime game 7? That was another moment too when I thought I had leaned back on the remote and I was like, did I just turn up? What just happened? Like, I think I had my head down at that point when the goal was scored. I was like, oh, I just missed like the biggest moment.
And that's the next thing about playoff hockey. Like, you can't look anywhere else. Like, you have to only be paying attention to what's in front of you because you can and will miss something or everything. That game, holy crap. Because first of all,
also poetic, kind of, right?
Oh, no, super poetic.
A little more aggressive than poetic, probably.
And in this series, they had the most penalty minutes and hits out of all of the series in the playoffs, which should just tell you a lot of things.
Love it.
But this one really got me because I was wearing my Apple Watch while I was watching it.
Oh, no.
And like my heart rate kept spiking
Are you working
so
out?
much.
Are you working out?
Yeah.
That's what asked me when I walk up the stairs.
Like, borderline, because my insides were not okay watching this. Like, the Blues come out and make like these 2 statement goals, like ugly but statement goals, and then you're thinking, oh my gosh, is this really how the Jets are going to go out? And then you're just starting to feel bad for Connor Hellebuyck. And yes, there's reviews on his performance, but regardless, statistically, he's pretty stout at home, and there has to be better communication, better coverage in front of him. I'm going to always lean towards his defense doing their job before I attack any sort of goalie. So that already had me so emotionally like heightened. Then you just see like, again, this is what makes hockey just so beautiful. These pushes, like, teams can never count themselves out because the strategy and the tactic, you can change everything. The Jets had a better second period, but they took over that game with being timely with their pulling their goalie in the third period, tying the game up with 1.6 seconds left, and then pushing for 2 overtimes. They wore out the Blues. They looked exhausted. They looked fatigued. And that's where you saw, again, that experience, that mental, just that extra umph, that grit, pull through and push a team to the next round.
And even this, small decision but big decision about when to pull the goalie, like, that's not a decision that you do with any hesitation.
Oh my gosh,
it's like kind of calling like a trick play too, right? Like, you can't just like kind of half call a trick play. Like, you got to go all in. Everybody's got to be bought in. Same with pulling your goalie. Like, if there's any hesitation from the coaching staff, you can really feel that as the player.
Yeah.
And then you're all panicking, right? So it's like, no, we're doing this. We've practiced it in practice, being in situational hockey, being in situational situations.
Yeah.
And it's really the tone and the confidence that you take into that. And you can even feel it from the other team when you're the opponent. When you're the other team and you see the other team pulling their goalie and all the extra player and everyone, they like are in a formation. You can see they know what they're doing. It's not like you're running around with your chicken with your head cut off. Like, you're like, there's strategy behind this. That's when you should really be freaking out.
And you mentioning confidence. I mean, that's the biggest thing when it comes to pulling the goalie decision, because sometimes a lot of the frustration or a lot of the fear when it comes to pulling your goalie is the timing of doing so. So 3+ minutes on the clock when they decided to pull Hellebuyck and add that extra attacker to the ice, and you're thinking to yourself, holy crap, that's a lot of time. And an empty netter just secures.
And your watch is going up.
Right. My watch is going up and off. And it's just like, we've seen a number of series where that empty netter secured the win for this team. So the risk versus reward situation there. But yeah, I mean, I freaked out for a second when I saw the time on the clock. And I just remember when I was doing coverage in Tampa Bay, like, Cooper used to get so much heat if he started to pull the goalie anywhere around the 2-minute mark. It was too much time. Fans were not on board for this. So to see that they were able to do that and accomplish exactly what they set out to do, pick up that goal, put them within 1, continue to make these pushes. Hellebuyck comes back up for a little bit. Seconds. He hit the ice for seconds, goes back to the bench. So now you're taking that risk versus reward one more time. And then with 1.6 seconds, you tie it up. I was just like you can't script write any of these playoff games.
No. And I bet you a lot more fans now have more trust in pulling the goalie with more time on the clock. And it's what you do. It's what when you're a fan, you got nothing else to do. You're just watching. So I do think everybody's got their own strategy and what they're comfortable with. And they know their players, right?
They do.
So, you just got to sometimes hope and believe and tell your Apple Watch to calm down. But the Stars will head to Winnipeg to face the Jets on Wednesday for game 1 of round 2. So just looking at this series, how do you see it matching up?
The biggest thing that comes to mind initially is, like I just mentioned, you've got a Jets team that just came out of a series where most penalty minutes, most hits. They are going to have to be disciplined versus this Stars team because, for one, the Stars have a lot of pace behind them, but they're anticipated to get back Jason Robertson, who is a punch to their power play. And you're already talking about having an experienced guy like Tyler Seguin, who was a good momentum swing on the power play for this Stars team in the beginning of the Stars versus Avs series. So if they're sitting here passing out power play opportunities to a team that's starting to find their groove, getting some of their other stars back, that's going to be a dangerous position for the Jets. Also, I mentioned, the Stars' capability for speed, and there was always this kind of back and forth on the neutral zone play for the Stars when they were going against the Avalanche, and we saw some exposure to that of the Jets' defense kind of breaking down in the neutral zone and some of their movement playing in front of Hellebuyck. That's why I say you can't just put it all on Hellebuyck, because some of his own defensemen were encroaching on his space in the crease in a clumsy way, I want to say.
Like the goalie's best friend.
I try to be.
Every goalie should be a fan of the sports.
And you want to know why? Right? Because I would never play goalie in my life.
No, I would never. I avoided that. It's morely like, I guess hockey too is like pretty scary. But
all of it is.
For women's lacrosse, I was always that kid. I was like, oh, volunteer this week. It's a rotation. What?
Yeah.
I'm in the bathroom randomly.
Right. I'm sick this week.
Yeah.
But they have the hardest job, and any kind of minor changes in front of you, it's a hard adjustment for a goalie. And one of my favorite goaltenders, Andre Vasilevsky, talked about the fact that the game is changing. Players aren't wasting shots. The accuracy and the precision is higher. And then on top of that, the ability to get a lot of traffic in your eyes is just ramped up because of the speed, the pace, and the change of the game. So all this in full circle to say that the Jets can't really have that exact physical mentality that they had versus the Blues. They're going to have to be a lot more disciplined going against this Stars team. And yeah, they've got a great penalty kill too, but again, the Avs weren't a bad team. They had some mistakes and things didn't go their way, so the Stars can capitalize on that. And I'm scary to see what a hot Mikko Rantin does, because these numbers, I just had to put it out there because Mikko has been in the same conference. Of 31 meets versus the Blues, he has 18 goals and 14 assists. But versus the Jets, he's got 10 goals and 18 assists, and that's also through 31 games. This is a guy who continues to produce when it comes to this competition. He's very well acquainted with these teams. He's very well acquainted with these players, and he's a playmaker. Dallas has a handful of playmakers on their roster, which I think is just going to be, an insane matchup at the end of the day.
Yeah, and just the wear and tear. When you play in those long games, multiple regulations, that's even more minutes that you're not taking to recover. So it all definitely adds up. But let's quickly get to the Eastern Conference. Round 2 begins today, and we also have the NHL lottery going on tonight. So there's a lot going on in hockey all today, but they're playing with the Florida Panthers are facing off the Toronto Maple Leafs. So just when you look at this matchup against the Stanley Cup reigning champs, how do you feel like they can really take this on?
Oh my gosh, they're already taking it on with a bloodbath mentality. You've got the Florida Panthers that I jokingly told Brendan earlier, they're like the Monstars of the NHL, if anybody, watched Space Jam growing up. But, they're big, they're physical, they have their speedsters, they obviously have quality goaltending, but it starts with coaching for me. And Paul Maurice's ability to make adjustments, and he has the ability to make such adjustments because of the depth of his roster and the number of contributors that can show up at any minute to help this Florida Panthers team. That's just kind of where I would edge them a little bit over the Maple Leafs. I think that their depth speaks a little bit higher and louder, and plus you've got guys who are postseason guys on this Panthers roster, so you might not see a lot of them during the regular season, but they put the numbers up in the postseason. Then you got this Toronto Maple Leafs team, which I don't think we should count out per se. They did get a little bit more physical. Their defense did get stronger, and Stolarz has just been phenomenal between the pipes for them. It's just going to be nerve-wracking because the Senators made a number of, their own mistakes, but scoring chances-wise, there was ways that they outplayed the Maple Leafs that the Panthers would just kind of completely dominate them in those categories. So it's going to be a fun one. It's going to probably be a crazy first 2 games. That's where the physicality physicality and the intimidation really plays in to see who can take the upper hand.
Right?
Yeah.
Intimidation is key. And when I think about the Panthers, I think about like a head hunting team.
They
right?
are.
Like it's really what it is. But I do want to bring up kind of that intimidation factor because Matthew Tkachuk went on the Pat McAfee show and he did have some things to say. And I truthfully don't think it was a shot at all at Toronto. I think it was more so just like, we're good. Like, get off my back, like kind of a confidence thing. I think if anything, maybe there's slightly something in there, but he did say, it's round 2. We've been in way more high pressure games and series than this. So there is a little bit of like, respect every opponent probably in there. But what did you take from that remark?
I had to take a deep breath because I was like, Tkachuk, Matthew, this is a bold statement in the beginning of a series that the Maple Leafs have a lot to prove and a lot of pressure on their shoulders. So they're going to make sure they do everything possible. And, of course, it starts with making sure that their core force shows up. But bold statement because, like I said, this is not the same Leafs team from last year. And, yeah, they tend to replicate some of their postseason woes. But some of the small adjustments that they have made, I feel like could extend this series beyond, like, the credit that Tkachuk is giving to it. Like, to be like, we've had harder games.
You don't know what's coming.
You don't know what's coming. Yeah, you've played in 2 Stanley Cup finals, but like, come on, you don't want to underestimate something before you feel it out. And so that's where it felt just like a little like, all right, Matthew, like now you have a lot to back up with those kinds of words. Like now you have to completely dominate and embarrass this team from drop 1.
And sometimes I do think athletes say out loud what they want to believe themselves. Like, I'm going to say that I'm not nervous. Right. Even though I'm freaking out because the more that I say, like we believe the stories we tell ourselves. Right. And so I think that could be part of it. Like, I think sometimes when you get into playoff sports in general, like whatever it is, you kind of get into a new mode. Yeah. Your gear shifts. And this could kind of be for Matthew in that same sense. Like, we're not worried about anybody. There's been harder things that have come across. Like, I think a little bit of it is the attitude. And I also feel like anytime you go on the Pat McAfee show, you're going to add a little swagger.
You're going to be the dude's dude. Yeah.
It's going to crank up for sure. Yeah. But I do want to get to the other game on Tuesday night, Caps Hurricanes. Mm-hmm. Do you feel like just with all the momentum that Ovechkin has had this season, how do you feel like they can really use that against the Hurricanes?
I think that his energy has probably just kind of been one of those level ups across the board in this locker room. And if you've seen any footage of the Capitals throughout the season, there's just been a vibe there.
They're fun. I'm like, I want to be in that locker room.
They're fun. They're confident, and they just, they love the game, and that's translating across the board. And you're just seeing them like really enjoy the game on a number of levels. So they're another team that just has some quality depth to them. Not as much scoring as the Canes do. I think the Canes have 12 goal contributors, while the Capitals have 8. But I think back to the Eastern Conference Final in 2023 when the Canes went against the Panthers. Panthers being that first really physical test. The Capitals can be that physical. They can be roughly as physical as the Panthers, which can wear down a skilled team. And they can maybe pull a page out of the Panthers book and try to force the Canes to be more one-dimensional. So overwhelming offense. They've got a great defense. I just think that like when it comes push to shove, I might lean towards the Capitals when it comes to goaltending, just because it has been kind of inconsistent on the Hurricane side throughout the regular season. We've seen better numbers in the postseason, but regardless, I would just love for, again, the poetry to continue for OV and like the rest of this squad. So,
yeah. Well, they definitely have an aura around them, but like you said, like really, it's who can turn the physicality on. Yeah, in
Tom
these
Wilson.
tough moments when it's just grit. However you get a goal, you get the goal. However you can defend, and anything can happen in playoff hockey. So I'm super excited to tune in, especially tonight with the NHL lottery and all the things. But if you're enjoying the show, you can listen to new episodes of Respect Her Game every Tuesday. You can watch the show on YouTube or Twitch and listen on Apple, Amazon, Spotify, and wherever else you get your podcasts. Okay, not what we thought we'd be talking about today on Respect Your Game with the PWHL. The Boston Fleet have been eliminated from playoffs. Really a shock. And they fell 3-2 to Montreal, and then they lost in a crazy defeat to Minnesota 8-1. I mean, we were group texting about this, and we're like 8-1?
Yeah,
like kind of wild and really out of nowhere. So just what were your initial reactions with this game? Because this was a really exciting Fleet team who has a lot of star power, and they just really couldn't get it done with the end of the season.
Yeah, honestly, it shocked me because, as y'all know, this previous Saturday, the Saturday before this, when they took on Toronto and Lowell, you just really saw this glimmer of hope not even a glimmer. You saw this like massive amount of hope throughout the roster, throughout the fan base, everyone. Toronto had a pretty good power play. They were able to make sure they contained that. You've got this big, shutout, Clara in between the pipes for the first time. There was just so many things that played into, okay, this Fleet team is taking the right steps in the right direction at a great time of the season.
Annabelle coming back, like new energy.
Yes, Belka coming back. And then on top of that, not having or showing any sort of like post-Worlds fatigue. So,
right, which was crazy.
Right.
Because you're thinking about that, you're like, man, like coming off of
that. Jet lag, like they were, all these things that play into it. So the amount of hope that just came out of that Toronto victory. And then, Montreal's always been a big battle for this team. We knew that. And there were some costly things that went against themselves. And then you get past Montreal and you're like, okay, all we got to do is close out. And let's just say this. The Frost had their number just about all season long. They made that pivotal change, I want to say February, maybe end of January, February. It was after the new year had started. They finally get that victory over the Frost, and then they start stacking the wins. So to think that the Frost come in and put up an 8-1 win over them, it just makes you wonder a number of things in terms of just where the mental was at, where the game planning tended to be. Were they able to make the right adjustments, or was this just a Frost team that went back to rare form beforehand and was able to come in and take a win?
Yeah, and just as much as it's a shock to us, it's definitely a shock to the players as well. So
oh my gosh.
Here's what Hilary Knight and Megan Keller had to say after the game.
Yeah, I think just be ready when puck drop occurred. And, we were fighting it a little bit all game. Nick Hensley played extremely well, but, we just didn't find the back of the net soon enough. Just keep going. I really respect every single person in that room for continuing to own her shift and go. And, you look up at the scoreboard and it's tough hole to climb out of, but every single person continued to go out there and do what she could to try and have an impact on the game. And that just speaks volumes to the type of players that we have in this room.
You guys following the Ottawa process or anything during this game was
Yeah, I mean, you want to control what you can control, and our gameplay was something that we could control. One of our teammates asked if we wanted to have updates between, and we said no. But our staff came in between the second and the third and said it was sort of a do or die situation, and obviously that's when we found out our fate. This league is so close to be scratched out by 1 point is tough. It sort of begets the question of that single point and how those previous games went. And, to be shy just of the single point is really tough way to go out, specifically because, we have the best team in the room and also some of the best fans in the world. So it's really special for us to be able to play here on home ice day in and day out.
Well, Hilary Knight really emphasized, I really was respecting every player's ability to still go out there and give it their all, right? And really go on every shift. And that's really hard when you're down so many goals. Like, you just got to keep climbing at the next one. But I think from this entire Fleet organization, just seeing their reactions after the game, like, yes, I think they were shocked, number one, at what had happened. And I've been in that situation, too, as a player. Mm-hmm. When you're coming in as, like, a top team and you just get blown out. And really, it's shocking to you because that wasn't the game plan. You probably didn't have the hot start that you wanted, and you really just couldn't get your feet under you because you try to, climb out, but then maybe the team comes in with like 2 back-breaking goals, or maybe there's a turnover that can really shut you down. But I'm seeing like a lot of shock in there, what they're saying, but I'm also seeing a lot of like gratefulness and a lot of, it's so cool to be a part of this team, and I'm so glad for this group of women that I have because it's not going to look like the same team next year.
No, it's not, and I'm glad that you point out like the gratitude aspect of it because you can just see the kind of family that the Fleet are. And we kind of talked about this last week when Annabelle made her return, and she talked about the support in terms of like her going through her recovery journey and how they've had to do it for a number of players in that locker room. So I think this is just one of those instances where there was a lot of adversity. We talked with Natalie Norrie a couple of times here on Respect Her Game, and she emphasized and made a great case to say, like, look, this team didn't have the ability to find their identity in the beginning of the season because you had a rotation of women coming in and out of the locker room between injury. Then they made some trade situations take place. So it was just really hard to stabilize, and create the identity in its entirety consistently of what this Fleet team needed to look like. When they hit their highs, that's when the identity was starting to solidify. That's when everybody kind of knew their role, their job. That's when each individual player was feeling their specific skill set that they could contribute. And then when they were feeling their lows, it was like, okay, well, one of our top players is out again. Like there was another rotation or something coming into the mix of everything. So I think a lot of the gratitude is in consideration of they faced a lot of adversity. They went through a lot of injuries. They only had a small portion of the season where they could really kind of identify like who this team is. And it was short-lived, but they learned a lot to carry into next year, probably have contingency plans if people go out with injuries and so on and so forth. So definitely still a shock, but
yeah. And it's hard to reflect in that moment, right? And be like, oh, next year, we thought we'd be playing for
we kept talking about postseason
Oh, totally.
without an inkling of an idea that there could potentially be no postseason.
Definitely. And I was a little disappointed too. And I know it was a 8-1 defeat, but there was one goal, and it was Jess DiGirolamo, who actually came on the show earlier this year. So I was super excited for her because this was her first career goal in 54 career games for Boston. I was like, oh, I felt bad for her because I'm like, this is such an awesome moment, but they probably didn't celebrate it that they wanted to. So cheering for the rest of the Fleet team and hopefully more goals next season. But it was fun to really watch them. I know you got to be at a lot of in-person games this season, and so I'm hoping to do the same next season. But just one piece of encouragement for people next season to go to Fleet games, what it would be.
The atmosphere, the fan base, and then on top of that, we have an amazing team, and I think this offseason is going to be transformative, and that doesn't mean moving a bunch of pieces away. I just think that it means having the ability to create that identity to come into the season a lot stronger than they did last year. And PWHL is expanding, so on top of that, you're going to have a little bit more in the schedule, in the competition. It's going to level everything up.
Seattle, Vancouver, coming to you next. Big, exciting things, and we'll talk PWHL expansion draft next week. And we didn't get to Girl on Fire, but quickly before we wrap up, Guy on Fire, our producer, Ethan. You're the best. We love you. Thank you for all the behind-the-scenes works that you do and all the things that people don't see and make the show running. So thank you for being our Guy on Fire today.
Best of the best.
This is another episode of Respect Your Game. I'm AB here with Kasey Hudson. We'll see you next week.